Welcome to the Formula Bone F1 Show's 2022 Austrian Grand Prix-view. I'm Jared Borislow, but you can call me J-Bone. Let's get into it, folks. J-Bone! Our first order of business today is getting to know the Austrian Grand Prix and its circuit, the Red Bull Ring. The Austrian Grand Prix was first run as a Formula One World Championship event back in 1964. The 1964 Austrian Grand Prix is unique because it was the only Formula One Austrian Grand Prix to not be held on the grounds of what is currently the Red Bull Ring. Instead, it was interestingly held at the Zeltweg Air Base, which is the main airfield of the Austrian Air Force. The story goes that the track surface, built, of course, for airplanes, was too abrasive and bumpy for Formula One to want to return there after the 1964 Austrian Grand Prix. So Formula One left Austria for 5 years before returning in 1970 to race at a new circuit, the Österreich Ring, which was built literally across the street from the Zeltweg Air Base. The Österreich Ring played host to the Austrian Grand Prix from 1970 all the way through 1987, when it was deemed too dangerous to play host to future Formula One races due to its very high speeds and lack of adequate safety measures. Generally, those two things together, not a great combination. Because of this, no Austrian Grand Prix was held from 1988 through 1996. The Austrian Grand Prix returned to Austria again in 1997 at the A1 Ring, which was built on the site of the Österreich Ring and incorporated a lot of the Österreich Ring into its much shorter and, of course, much safer track design. The A1 Ring hosted the Austrian Grand Prix from 1997 through 2003 before the race once again left the F1 calendar as F1 had outgrown the circuit. Red Bull co-founder Dietrich Mateschitz ended up buying the A1 Ring and renovated it to the point where it was fit for F1 once more. So the Austrian Grand Prix came back in 2014 and has been held at this renovated but very similar in-circuit design iteration of the A1 Ring, renamed the Red Bull Ring, ever since. Fun Austrian Grand Prix fact: Niki Lauda is the only Austrian driver to win their home Grand Prix, which he did in 1984 at the Österreich Ring, en route to becoming 1984's World Drivers' Champion. And it's a good thing for him that he did, not just because he got to experience winning his home Grand Prix, which is undoubtedly on every driver's bucket list, but also because those extra P1 points ended up being crucially important at the end of the season. Niki Lauda ended up only winning the World Drivers' Championship in 1984 by half a point, the smallest margin of World Drivers' Championship victory in Formula One's history, and of course the second smallest margin of victory possible, beaten only by there being a tie and a tiebreaker. In honor of three-time world champion Niki Lauda, Turn 1 at the Red Bull Ring was renamed the Niki Lauda Curve in 2019 after his death. Now, onto the circuit itself. The Red Bull Ring is a short circuit at just 4.318 kilometers or 2.683 miles in length, and the Austrian Grand Prix will be contested over the course of 71 laps around its 10 turns. The Red Bull Ring features 3 DRS zones that are uniquely located on what are effectively back-to-back-to-back straights. This means that if you're within a second of the car in front of you at the DRS detection zone just past turn 9, you will then have the benefit of opening your DRS flap to complete your overtake from just past turn 10 all the way across 3 long straights to turn 4, with just 2 short flap closings during that span, those being at turns 1 and 3. Insane. So much of this circuit is DRS zone. Furthermore, 2 of the Red Bull Ring's 3 DRS detection zones are located at the end of DRS straights, meaning this is a prime circuit. For the return of the DRS chicken games we saw Max and Leclerc playing at the start of the season, as drivers may be strategically hesitant to attempt some overtakes if they know that doing so will be giving DRS to the driver they just overtook on the following straight that driver can then use to retake their position. Furthermore, and in an unrelated note, the Red Bull Ring is one of, if not the most picturesque circuits on the F1 calendar, as it's nestled in a wooded valley with amazing views of the beautiful Styrian Mountains. I sound like I'm giving a timeshare presentation right now, but I'm not. It's just a really, really beautiful circuit. So feast your eyes this weekend, folks. For tire compounds at the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix, Pirelli have opted for the softest possible compound range, the C3 hards, C4 mediums, and C5 softs. Pirelli Motorsport Director Mario Isola had this to say about their choice, quote, "The asphalt at the Red Bull Ring offers reasonably low grip on a low-severity circuit, which makes it possible to bring the softest tires in the range. This helps us in putting the focus on entertainment at a venue that has often delivered exciting races in the past, thanks to a busy and compact lap that's essentially a series of short corners. Traction and especially braking are key here, with a particular risk of lockups in some of the tricky downhill braking areas. Maintaining the performance of the rear tires throughout the lap is also vital to ensure adequate traction. Our tire nomination makes a variety of different potential strategies possible." End quote. No one has a business like yours with all its strengths and challenges. To succeed, you need a hiring partner that adapts to your needs. You need this episode's sponsor, Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Find great talent faster through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. One of the things I love about Indeed, and one of the reasons we'll be using it for our next hire here at Bolen Media, is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because they have such an amazing talent pool. In fact, 3 out of 4 US online job seekers search for jobs on Indeed each month, according to ComScore. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/fbone. Offer good for a limited time, so get to it. This is an amazing deal because when you sponsor an Indeed post in the US, you're 3 times more likely to get a hire, according to Indeed data. So claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/fbone. That's Indeed.com/fbone. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And there's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Next up, here are your storylines to follow for the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix. The first storyline, F1 Sprint is back. The Austrian Grand Prix marks the second of the 2022 Formula One season's 3 F1 Sprint weekends, with the first having taken place at Imola, where Max won both the Sprint and Grand Prix, and the final one taking place at Interlagos. As a reminder, that means that qualifying will be held on Friday instead of Saturday, and will determine the starting grid for the sprint race, as well as determine the official Grand Prix pole sitter for the record books, not for the Grand Prix, for the record books. The sprint race will be held Saturday and determine the starting grid for the Grand Prix, including the Grand Prix pole sitter, as well as award points to the top 8 drivers. And then, of course, the Grand Prix will be held on Sunday. Also, as a reminder, do not expect too many car upgrades at the Austrian Grand Prix, as teams generally avoid upgrading their cars during sprint weekends, as there is only one free practice session before parc fermé conditions go into effect, after which teams cannot work on their cars. Usually, on a normal weekend, there are 3 free practice sessions before parc fermé conditions, which gives teams plenty more time to make sure their upgrades are actually upgrades and not downgrades or 0 grades. The second storyline, will Red Bull go 1-2 at their home Grand Prix? The Red Bull Ring is literally owned by and named after Red Bull, so you have to think it is pretty embarrassing for them when they lose there, which has happened 6 of the 10 times that a Formula One race has been held at the circuit since it was named after Red Bull. All 6 times, by the way, at the hands of Mercedes. You have to imagine Red Bull will be doing everything in their power to make sure they get that home Grand Prix 1-2 in the name of pride, but also the Drivers and Constructors Championships. Also, I have a conspiracy theory that Red Bull are never going to lose at the Red Bull Ring in the cost cap era because they own it and thus have access to every piece of data about it that they can use to make sure they always win there, now that the cost cap should prevent a team like Mercedes from just coming in with the best car in the world and owning them. It's just a theory, but if Red Bull win there this weekend, you're gonna maybe start believing in it. The final storyline, will Ferrari not make a strategy error at the Austrian Grand Prix? Honestly, it is hard to bet against Ferrari making a strategy error of some magnitude in Austria, given the form that they're in this season. So I'm personally not going to, and I'm guessing that they do make one. If you disagree with me, or have any guesses surrounding what the error Ferrari makes might be, let me know in the YouTube comments of this episode. Speaking of YouTube, real quick before we keep going, if you're enjoying the Formula Bone F1 show and want to help me grow the show, as well as be notified whenever I release new Formula One content, I would really appreciate it if you could take 10 seconds right now and subscribe to my YouTube channel, then ring that notification bell to turn on all Formula Bone notifications. YouTube tells me that over 87% of people who watch my content on YouTube are not subscribers, which is a huge percentage and makes J-Bone very sad. So, if you could toss me a 100% free YouTube subscription and ring that notification bell as well, I would be eternally grateful. Also, I'm trying to get 1,000 likes on this video episode if you're able to help me out with that as well. Thank you all so much for the support. As always, it means the world to me. J-Bone! Next up, here are my 3 bona-fide race predictions for the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix that I'm about to go 3 for 3 on. Bona-fide prediction number 1. Max Verstappen will win the Austrian Grand Prix. Max has won 3 of the last 4 Austrian Grand Prix and 4 of the last 6 Grand Prix held at the Red Bull Ring when you include the Styrian Grand Prix, and I really think he wins in Austria again this year with how well he's been driving and how well this track is set up for the RB18. Bonafide prediction number 2. Red Bull will see both of their drivers podium at the Austrian Grand Prix. It's Red Bull's home Grand Prix, and like I said, the Red Bull Ring suits their car extremely well. Coincidence? I think not. So I predict we will see 2 Red Bull drivers on the podium in Spielberg. And finally, bonafide prediction number 3. Charles Leclerc will be on the podium for the first time since the Miami Grand Prix. After starting the year off with 3 podiums and 2 wins in the first 3 races, Charles Leclerc has now not been on the podium for 5 races in a row, which is just insane to think about given his near perfect start to the season. I think Charles Leclerc puts a solid podium performance together in Austria to end this skid and begin righting the ship. Those were J-Bone's bonafide race predictions. Now, I want to hear your bonafide race predictions. Let me see them in the YouTube comment section of this podcast. And finally here today, I'm going to now give my bonafide pre-race weekend predictions for the top 5 finishers in Sunday's Austrian Grand Prix with zero reasoning nor explanation. P5, George Russell. P4, Carlos Sainz. P3, Checo Perez. P2, Charles Leclerc. And P1, Max Verstappen. That's it For today's episode of the Formula Bone F1 show, if you enjoyed the show and want to help me out, I'd really appreciate it if you could toss me a comment, like, subscription, rating, review, or any other form of engagement on whatever platform you're on right now so that said platform and its algorithm like J-Bone more. I respond to pretty much every YouTube comment on my Formula Bone F1 show episodes, and if you don't believe me, try it out. Speaking of YouTube, if you join the Noti Gang by ringing that bell and turning on all Formula Bone YouTube notifications, I'll love you forever. And also, if you watch HBO's TV show Westworld that just came back for season 4, then you need to check out my Westworld podcast called Freeze All Motor Functions, available wherever you're currently watching or listening to this episode right now. We just released our Season 4 Episode 2 recap to help you process that insane episode. My two co-hosts and I, Ross and Serena, have a ton of laughs while trying to understand this crazy, complex, and fun show. And we've got an awesome community of listeners who all team up with us to try and figure out what's going on together. It's so fun. So check out Freeze All Motor Functions and join in on that fun. For Formula One updates between now and my Austrian Grand Prix recap podcast, you can join over 400 members of the Bone Brigade in the Formula Bone Discord server via the invite link in the description of this episode, and you can also follow me on all social media at Formula Bone and at my real name, Jared Borislow. That's at JaredBorislow. Until next time, folks, J-Bone!